Let's get close and comfy, yes.
1, 2, 3 cheers.
Yes. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Larry Freed. I'm the program director here at BJFM. And thank you, that's very kind. We are here, if you couldn't already tell, with Breaking Silence subject Janis Ian and director Varda Barkar. One more round of applause for him, please.
Grateful to y'all for coming out on a work night too.
So before we dive into the Q&A, I just want to remind folks that this film is eligible for an audience award. As part of our Film and Media Festival, you all received the ballots on the way in. As you're walking out, please tear at the grade that you want to give this film and be sure to distribute it to our ballot collectors outside for a number of reasons. It's been a minute since you've been here in Philadelphia, of course, and you are a Philly icon, tried and true. But in April of this year, you were actually formally inducted into the Philadelphia Music Alliance Walk of Fame.
Right.
And you have the star right there on the Walk of Fame. It's still fresh, still smells fresh. Not too many scuff marks on it just yet. And I think that it's just, as soon as I saw this film and then I learned the news about your induction, I knew that we just had to bring you here because in a way, this is a celebration of the film, but it's also just a celebration of you, your life, and your legacy, and we think it's important that Philadelphia get a chance to celebrate that. I was wondering for you, what does it feel like to be able to return to Philadelphia, especially after that honor earlier this year?
Well, I can afford to eat out this time. Philly's been really important in my life. I mean, that's a cliche, I'm supposed to say that, right? But I wrote Stars here. So to me, I came of age as a writer here. I wrote my first adult songs here. I wrote Stars, I wrote Jessie. The first time I sang Stars and went back on stage after 3 years off was the Philly Folk Festival. Philadelphia has been really important in my life. Used to play the Academy of Music every 2 or 3 years. That great, wonderful picture with Billy Joel and Ed Shockey, MMR, and Bruce Springsteen, that guy, from Jersey. It's been important to me. Jerry Weiss, my therapist that Varda puts in the film, was here in Elkins Park and then on Chestnut. I lived down by the docks and then by Chinatown when you could rent a 3-story place for $175 a month. Back in the day, when it was not safe, in the Rizzo years, when that was also not safe. Philly was a big part of my growing up, so it's a big deal to be here.
It's a big deal for us to be here, so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Varda, talk to me about your relationship to Janis Ian, not just her music and of course, your journey experiencing her music, but what inspired you to take on this film?
Well, I have to say, I adore Janis, and the more I've gotten to know her, the deeper that's been and become, and I'm very appreciative, Janis.
Thank you, as it should be. Now, you have to understand that we barely saw each other during the process of making the film.
Yes, Alex, yes.
So it's only since the film was finished that we've become friends.
That's why I can now say that. I couldn't say that during the film process. I did not know Janis prior to making the film. However, when I was in high school, I used to listen to, someone had given me her album, Between the Lines. And I remember listening to it and crying because I felt so seen and heard by her music. And, just listened to it over and over and over again and just kept, crying. And cut to many, many, many years later, I'd finished my prior film, Fandango at the Wall, and I started to think about what do I want to do next. And there was a lot of talk about identity and how we identify, and I started to think about my own identity and do I feel represented in film and media? And I determined no, I do not. And I thought, well, what if I were to make a film about an artist with whom I closely identify? Who would that be? And very quickly, Janis Ian came into my mind. Now, clearly I'd taken in her music, and this is the power of music, to heal, and it stays with you. And all these years later, it came to me that I identified with Janis, and then I had to find out about her, because I knew nothing about her at that time.
So she went online and Googled me, and as I do every morning. And she realized there had not been a film made, so she looked on my website.
Well, no, I found the book.
That.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Oh, you found my autobiography.
I found the autobiography. I read the autobiography. I also listened to at least 50 or 60 songs. Listened to many, many songs through all the different periods. Between the combination of this incredible body of work and this incredible life story, I thought there's got to be a documentary made about her. This is crazy. This could not be. And that's when I started to Google it, documentary Janis Ian, documentary Janis Ian, and the one didn't come up. So I went to her website, and I went to the contact page, and I left a message, and I said, my name is Varda Barkar, I'm a filmmaker, and I would love to make a film about you.
And I immediately said no. Because the first time somebody wanted to make a film about my life and write a book about my life, I was 16. And so it's been, throughout my life, people have said, oh, I would love to write your life story. And I'm like, I'm not done.
I was going to say, this probably was not the first time, nor will it be the last time, somebody will probably ask you to make a film of this kind.
Oh, it's definitely the last time I'm going to be involved. No, I mean, I think if you have this has been a really great experience for me. And I don't hate the film, which is major. I mean, I know artists who've had films made about themselves and then they tell all their friends don't watch it. So once you've got a good one, don't push your luck.
Can I ask what it was about Varda in particular that made you think, I can trust this person to tell my story?
But it wasn't quick. I had just gone through a thing with a producer from a PBS station that will remain nameless. And I had signed a contract for him to produce a documentary about my life, and then he literally overnight, I signed it that morning and we went to dinner and he turned into a different person. And I said, you know, I'm going to make your parents out to be the villains that they were, and I was like, what? And so I waited out the contract. So when Varda came to me, I had just walked away from that, and I thought, the universe is telling me don't do this. So I immediately said no, and I said no a couple of times, I think. And then we started talking, and I asked her what her vision was. And it was very close to what I felt, which was that I didn't want a film that would be a puff piece about how fabulous I was. I wanted something that would also capture the times, because that's what the songs grew out of. And that would take the points in my life that were affected by those times and the things that were important to the times, not just to me. So we were aligned on that, and then I watched everything she had ever done. And then my lawyer made her do a 20-minute, what was that called?
Proof of concept.
Proof of concept, where she had to kind of show us what her overall vision was. And that was really good. And I actually sent that to several friends who said, wow, that's really good. And then we were off and running.
Yeah. That took about a year, that whole process.
And how long did the process for the entire film take?
It took 3 years.
I mean,
which is quick for a documentary.
It's fairly quick. It's fairly quick, but I will say you wouldn't be able to know watching it because you cover such a wide scope of events. I mean, really from the very beginning to where we are right now, and you do it all in 114 minutes, which seems long to some people on the outside, but when you speak to filmmakers, you know that not only is every minute justified, but you actually kept it pretty concise, given how much information you're spanning through. I'd love to hear from you just, you know, how do you go about curating that structure of her life, and, you know, are there hard cuts that need to be made of things that can't be included? Or do you fight to not kill certain darlings on in the editing process? You know, talk to me about curating this entire piece.
Well, first I had to come up with an overall structure, and I decided that I wanted to have 3 key songs be the centerpiece for 3 acts. So it's a traditional 3-act structure with the traditional turning points and all of that. And at the heart of each one is society's child at 17, between the lines, you know, circled by aftertones and stars, and then the third act, the centerpiece, would be breaking silence. So what I had to, and then everything kind of weaves together in terms of the times and Janis's life experiences, and they all serve to kind of support those songs or show how her life and what she was going through and what she was writing led up to that, and then what happened afterwards. And then, so that's how I came up with the structure. And definitely, I had to let go of some very important things. Janis, I highly recommend Janis's autobiography, which is going to be re-released
in December.
In December. In it, you will see that she had an experience similar to an experience I had actually, in which she had gone into the woods. It happened to me when I was in my late teens, and Janis was younger at the time, but she had gone into the woods and she had this, and was looking, I think, at a stream or river, and had this experience of something larger and bigger than her, and then felt the connection of everything, and identified that as God, I think.
Wait, we have to explain that though. My parents were both atheists. My grandparents, after they arrived from Russia and Poland, became atheists. So it was appalling to my mother that my brother and I both said, no, we think there's a God. And my mother would always say to me, what did I do wrong? But that kind of epiphany, that moment when you suddenly realize that everything is part of everything, and we're all made of molecules, and it's just spinning molecules. So the only difference between colors or races or nationalities or heights or chairs and tables is just the way the molecules spin. And that's a very huge realization, I think, that makes you aware of how big and how small the world is all at once.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. And again, I very much identified that with that. I had a similar experience, different contexts. But it didn't, and we filmed for it, and you know, it was all ready to go. I had all this material around that, but it just didn't fit in the story. And we could only spend so much time on Janis's childhood because we had to move on. That was one of the ones that, you know, we had to let go of.
Stella Adler.
Which really hurt.
Stella Adler's not in there, who changed my life. I met her when I was 33 and she was 83, and she was probably the biggest influence on me as an artist since my parents and Dylan and Baez when I was very young. So she didn't make it in, but if you watch the film at home, you can see at the very end of the credits a quote by Stella where I had gone to her and said that I wasn't happy with my writing. I was about 34 then, and she looked at me and she said, my dear, you have reached the age where talent is no longer enough. And that to me was a revelation. I had never thought about that. She really changed me into a completely different writer and human being. But it didn't fit.
As you can see, we could have made multiple documentaries, I'm sure, about everything. Janis.
Janis Ian too.
Don't give anyone any ideas. You know they'll run with them. Janis,
Barda and I are appalled. No.
I want to open it up to questions from the audience, but before I do, I have one more question, and that's for you, Janis. You know, you've had cameras in front of you almost your entire life. You've had performances filmed. You've surely taken part in other film projects, but I'm curious if having the cameras on you for this project in particular felt in any way different or meaningful than they were in the past.
Yeah, most of the cameras on me for this, I wasn't working. That was weird. I mean, to be followed around on the Berea campus by a camera crew, when normally I just strut around on that campus and go to the library and things like that, that was very weird. And I said to you a couple of times, why am I doing this? Why are you taking pictures of me walking? I mean, I don't even like the way I walk. Why am I doing this? It wasn't until we got to the piano that I felt comfortable in my space. So it's weird. It's weird watching yourself on film. I mean, that's... When I came up, I couldn't watch myself on TV because there was only live. So the first time I saw Saturday Night Live was sometime in the mid-'80s, or 90s even. I never saw myself on Carson or the Grammys or any of that except in stills. So that is also weird. But to see your whole life in front of you, I can't tell you how bizarre it is.
Can I just, as we were talking about you brought up Maria, so I want to just tell that story about the piano. You know how the film opens with that beautiful piano piece and we see Janis playing the piano? Well, we were filming in the archive and someone came running in and said, there's this beautiful space and there's a piano, you know, maybe we can go in.
Bosendorfer.
Maybe we should, like, let's all just go over there and have Janis play, you know, and I said, okay. So we all dash over there and we start to set up to film, and then you sit at the piano, Janis sits at the piano, and she starts playing this really beautiful piece. And we all just kind of vibe with that and film, you know, let that piece kind of tell us what to film and how to film it. And we get it all done, and then I think, oh my God, I'm gonna have to get the rights to that music. And I run over to Janis and I said, can you please tell me the name of that piece so that I can make sure we get the rights to it?
And I said, I have no idea, I was just playing around. But that's the thing, I think, when you're lucky enough to be born with talent, and you're lucky enough to be born into a family that encourages it, and a culture that encourages it, for me, sitting at a piano, when I lost my ability to sing, all I kept thinking was, I want to crawl into a piano, and I want to hide there. Because for me, piano, since I was 2.5, has been the safe space. That's been something that was always mine. And the creative part of me then, it was so weird being filmed all day, and then to be able to sit down at the piano and actually know what I was doing was great.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. I want to open it up to audience questions. Before we get started, please note that we don't have too much time, so if you do have a question, please do your best to keep it brief and keep it to a question. I know we all have Janis Ian stories, and we have a reception afterwards that'll be great for them. But for now, I really want to focus on questions from the audience, concrete questions.
You can email me your long story.
Yes. Who has a question? Yes, the woman in the back there.
I saw a note, just as we were all distracted by your coming onto stage, that said something like the filmmaker approximated some things from Janis's life in order to give the audience more of a view. And it certainly made sense to me that there were so many recordings and videos of you performing, but I was wondering if you could talk more about all the interaction between Janis and her lovers and when she was younger, and how those were made.
Well,
Go for it with my lovers.
yes. I wanted to see Janis with her lovers, so.
Yeah. She asked me for Super 8 of me when I was young, and I laughed and said nobody in my family could afford a movie camera.
Yes. So I'm a very visual storyteller, and I think and see visually, and so I thought, well, how are we going? Also, what I really wanted to do was introduce Janis in present day at the beginning, but then take you back in time and have you take her life journey with her, which meant I didn't want to keep coming back to Janis in the present day. I wanted you to just get lost in time and then come back and arrive to her in a chronological order. So that means that all that time where you hear Janis speaking, telling her story, I needed to find visuals and a visual, way of telling the story. And because there was no footage of Janis, from her childhood, and the other footage that we did find is mostly of her performing with a couple of interviews that we were able to find. I had to find a way to do that, and I was very reticent because I'm not a big fan of recreations. And I was thinking, well, how can we do it? And then I was thinking, well, what if it was just like my imaginings of Janis's memory, and we just made it very suggestive and very kind of, as though there was a documentary being made about her at all these different periods in her life, and we'd shoot it like a documentary, and so that's how that came about.
That's a great question. I love reconstruction documentary. I think it's a powerful tool. I think it's used especially well here. Any other questions? Who has questions? Yes, gentleman right here.
Waving frantically.
Hey,
Just go ahead talking.
I'm listening to you speak, and your speaking voice sounds, to me, very strong and powerful. And could you say?
Scarring on my right vocal cord, something ruptured, and there is no cure for it. They can go in and they can shave it, but it'll just create more scar tissue. So when I sing now, it's been 2 years, I think. When I try to sing, I can't be sure that I can hold my notes. And I've always had very good intonation. I've never had to use any mechanical help to intonate, but I can't be sure that I can intonate now. And once I understood that I might be able to get through a show, 1 or 2, but not a week of shows, I decided to call it quits. And if we were talking for an hour, after about 45 minutes, my voice would start getting really raspy, and then it wouldn't be able to control the up and the down of it. Just what it is.
Any other questions? Don't be shy, folks. This is your one shot.
Yeah, don't leave us sitting here like idiots.
Yes, this gentleman right here in the front.
Hi.
You had a lot of artists perform your songs over time, covers of your song. Did any of their performances change how you thought about your songs and what they meant to you in any way?
What a good question.
That's a great question.
That's a really good question. Huh. I don't think so, because most of the songs other artists have performed, I've also performed. For me, it's more like when I listened to Celine Dion do at 17 and I realized she didn't lift anything from my version. She made it her own. There have been moments, this is going to sound silly, a group called Vanilla Fudge recorded Society's Child when I was very young, and that changed the way I looked at, that changed the way I performed the song, because I always performed it as a narrative, and they performed it like an in-your-face statement, and so when I performed it later in life, it was much more in your face. But yeah, that's a great question. Not that I'm aware of. I have to think about that, thanks.
Anyone else? Yes, this gentleman right here. Yep, that gentleman right there.
Wait, raise your hand, wave. Wherever you are. He's right there.
Oh, sorry, the lady right there.
Lady.
Apologies.
Sorry.
It's very bright light here.
Yeah, we
It's
can't
his
see
fault.
from here.
That's okay. I thought I heard in the film that you changed your name,
I did.
and how did that come about?
I'm sorry, how did that come about?
Yeah.
My parents, my grandparent, my grandfather, my father's father, was given a name at Ellis Island. They gave him the name Fink, although they thought it was Finch, but then they spelled it Fink. And so when it came time for me to start performing, I really didn't want my family to be involved. And I picked my brother's middle name, Ian, and took that. I was 13, I think. It's always weird to me because sometimes people will send me an email and they'll say, so, Janis Fink. Like, we know each other, but that's been my name for 61 years.
Yes, yeah.
So I kind of feel entitled to it at this point. Plus, there's Mean Girls, so. There was somebody right in front of you, too.
Yes. This gentleman right here, we can have the next question.
I was curious because I saw you in the beginning of the movie playing the guitar, and then later on in the movie you played the piano so eloquently. Did you learn them in tandem growing up?
No, I started piano when I was 2.5.
Okay, so
And then I
piano
picked up
first.
the guitar at camp when I was 10. So, and it's a very hard transition for a pianist because it's the opposite. Because on piano, the high notes are on the right, and on the guitar, they're all in the wrong place. So it was kind of doing this to my head, but it was good for me. I was lucky that I was going to what my friend Jani calls the Commie Pinko Red Diaper Baby Camp. And we had people like Eric Weisberg as music counselors, Bernice Reagan, Richie Havens, Pete Seeger. So everybody was very generous teaching me. You know, people think it's so weird that I was writing songs, but pretty much every kid I knew from the age of 12 on was writing or making marionettes or putting on plays. I think we really radically underestimate what kids are up to because there's all this stuff going on in their heads. And when they're in private, there's a lot of stuff going on that we don't know about. And a lot of it is just really creative things. I was lucky that I had talent and outlets for it. The piano is the first love.
We have time for one more. Yes. This.
Keyboard?
Okay. Let's see. Let's see how the questions
1,
roll.
2, 3.
All right. Let's do this. We'll start with this lady right here in the front.
You have 8 seconds. Go for it.
In the documentary, you talk. There's a moment there where you're with Leonard Bernstein,
How did that come about, and did you get a chance to get to know him? Was
Just a
there
little
any
bit.
kind of interaction
I know
there?
his kids better than I got to know him. David Oppenheim, his producer, was a friend of Robert Shelton, who was the New York Times music critic. Bob Shelton saw me do Society's Child, heard the record, gave it to David, who was the love of Lenny's life, and David gave it to Bernstein, who said, let's feature her. That's where so much of this business is just luck. It's just being in the right place at the right time and moment. Yeah, but I just did a thing with his two remaining children, because Alexander just died. I just did a thing that Jamie Bernstein put in New York, which was a reimagining of his songs. And it was really cool because I can't sing anymore. So I took the song Cool and I took the lyrics and made it a confrontation between an old white lady and a young trans woman and a young black man. But that was really fun. Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to go straight there.
Janice, do you recall the folks that you...
There was somebody over here.
Yes, this gentleman right here.
Should I just project?
Yeah, go for it.
You mentioned Mean Girls, and there's a character named after you.
There certainly is.
Such a huge part of the zeitgeist. Do you enjoy knowing that your mark is on that modern film that people still love?
Do I enjoy knowing that Mean Girls is using my name? I would have enjoyed it more if they'd asked. I don't enjoy it when I have to pay legal bills to shut down Paramount Pictures making bobbleheads in my name, or games where the Janis Ian figure is bashing people with a guitar. I don't think that was any of us. She meant it as a homage, Tina, and when we talked about it after, she said she was afraid to tell me. So the first I heard about it, somebody was congratulating me on my new career in film. And then there was this gentleman over here.
Yes.
Can you yell?
Yes. I was very moved by the vulnerability that the film demonstrated, your vulnerability, the losses that you suffered in your life, including what you described, unfortunately, as the loss of your singing voice. And
There needs to be a question.
yes, and the question is, what is the source from which you've drawn your strength to survive and transform?
I never thought I had any choice. I mean, what's the option? I always thought that nobody is born a hero. You behave heroically and you become a hero. Nobody is born with an immense amount of emotional strength. You develop it. Your family helps guide it and give it to you. But for me, there's not an option. You get up and you move on. It's like right now, the State of the Union here. There's nothing in the book of life that says we get to relax, or that we get to rest, or that we get to stop advocating for what is good and just. It's just what it is. And that's kind of get up and go on.
I couldn't think of a better note to end on than that. Janis Ian, part of our car. Thank you both so much for joining us. Thank you all for
Thank you
joining us.
all. Thanks for being here.
Just a reminder, there is a reception on the 5th floor ballroom. Please join us. They will be joining us.